Hello there folks, I hope you can see me alright. I'm in the shed today. It's been a wee while since I checked in with you, and I thought we were overdue a wee catch up, let you know that everything is all good here, we're safe and well. And actually I've been getting out and about a lot. I've been out every day doing great long hikes, but I haven't been taking the camera with me. I don't want the channel to get bogged down with the same videos over and over and over again. So I thought I'll just have a bit of me time and I'll get out and do a bit of wandering, keep the fitness levels up hopefully, getting a few kilometres every day. But I thought it would be good to catch up, and there's a question that I'm asked over and over on the channel, and that is what are the best boots to wear? And there isn't really an answer to that question, to be absolutely honest with you, because it depends entirely on what you're doing and where you're going and how long you're going to do it for, and also the kind of shape and nature of your own feet and walking style and so on and so forth. So it raises more questions than it answers in many respects. And the other thing is, I'm not very keen on doing instructional videos on the channel for two reasons. One, I don't think I'm a very good instructor, and secondly, I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough to be absolutely blunt about it. I just kind of do what I do, and I've picked up my own tips and techniques over the years. Not had a great deal of training in any of this. I just enjoy what I do and learn as I go. So for these reasons, I'm always pretty keen to shy away from instructional type videos. But I thought, oh, maybe this is a way to keep in touch, to let you know that we're safe and well here, and to answer a question that comes up again and again, or at least attempt to answer it, to provide a wee bit of information from my own personal perspective and see if that helps at all. So what I've done here, folks, is I've laid out a few boots. This is just a part, actually it's a small part of my boot collection, which probably tells you more than I want you to know. A bit of a hoarder perhaps. So this is part of my boot collection, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run through some of them quickly, but I'm going to dwell on others for a little bit longer, because there are some boots here that I think are absolutely brilliant for the type of walking that I suspect most of my subscribers and viewers are interested in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rule out some of these boots quite quickly. So this is a double boot. So these are the boots that I use. This is the kind of boot that I used when I was in the Himalaya. So it's a plastic boot, and it's got two parts to it. It's got an outer and it's got an inner. So really highly insulated, almost rigid boot, you know, like a ski boot. I'll talk a wee bit at the end about compatibility with crampons, but I don't want to talk about that just yet. So I'm just going to pop that back there, and then I'll show you another winter mountaineering boot that I use. Again, it's a rigid boot, and so I'm just going to discount these for now as kind of specialist boots where you're going to spend a lot of time on hard packed snow or ice, on steep terrain. They're not boots that you would ordinarily go hill walking with in Scotland. You might use something like this for winter walking in Scotland if you're going to be doing a little bit of mountaineering, but if you're not going onto the faces or onto the steeper slopes, then you probably wouldn't need this. This boot here, I'm also going to get it out of the way quite quickly. So this is a boot with loads of holes in it. It's to allow the water to go in, and it's got a very grippy sole on it, and this is a boot that I would wear when I'm wading about. So if I'm out with a pack craft, if I'm fishing, if I'm on the sit on top kayak, you sometimes see me on the water, and I'm actually steering the kayak by putting my foot into the water and turning myself around a bit. Usually I'm doing that not to position myself for a better cast, but actually to give a better camera angle so that you've got a nicer background. And if I'm wearing these boots, invariably I would have my dry suit on, and my dry suit's got socks that are attached to the dry suit, so my feet are dry, despite the fact that the boot is completely submerged underwater, and also it's not a waterproof boot. Sometimes I do wear these without my dry suit, but if I do that, then I would wear a sock such as this or that. So you might recognize that. That's a sealskin sock. So sealskin is a brand, it's not made from sealskin, and that is the Bridgedale version, which is a little bit longer, and I actually think the longer ones make more sense, because if you're going to be out, say in the packraft or the canoe, and you're jumping in and out, you're doing portages, you're in the water, if you've got that on, you're waterproof, but only up to there. If you go beyond there for any length of time, the water will get in, because that collar there is quite tight, but it's not super tight, so the water will actually get down, and it kind of defeats the purpose. Whereas there, it allows you to wade with these boots on up to about there, and your feet will stay dry. Is it all making sense so far? So we'll push these boots out the way. We're not going to dwell anymore, in fact, on these. I might just mention a wee bit about crampon compatibility at the end, but we'll leave that for later. The other boot that I'm going to rule out, especially for hill walking through the seasons in Scotland, is this. This is a Scarpa boot. It's a boot that's called the Mescalita, but they don't make it now. But Scarpa use the name Mescalita to describe an approach shoe now, so a little bit confusing. So back in the day, the Mescalita was a proper rock boot. So this has got a very high rubber composite sole on it. It's Scarpa's own sole, it's not a Vibram sole, and it's reversed leather. It's not 100% waterproof boot, but what it is, it's super breathable, it's really light for the size of it, and it's super sticky. So when you're rock climbing, if you're scrambling and stuff like that, this is a brilliant boot. Where I use them the most, apart from my time when I was climbing on limestone in the Himalaya, I used it on the Black Coulee on the good days, where the gabbro that comprises the Coulee is really rough. It's like climbing a rasp or something like that. It's so sticky, it's quite difficult for your boot to slide on it. But the gabbro gives way in many places to basalt, and these two rocks geologically are actually very similar. I think it's the rate of cooling that creates the differences. Anyone that's climbed on basalt will know, with just a little bit of moisture on it, it's as slippery as ice. It's as slippery as wet glass, and these boots help a little. So another kind of specialist boot that we can get out the way quite quickly. Then this boot also, so this is a boot with a lightweight Vibram sole on it, and these are also Scarpa boots, but you can see how soft it is, and very flexible boot. And basically I use these for dadding around in the countryside round about the house, if I'm going for a walk in the woods or round the field margins, or if I'm going up on a good day perhaps to on the lower slopes of the Lammer Muirs, just over my shoulder there, or maybe a bit of coastal walking, whatever. I would put something like this on. Super lightweight, but it's not got a lot of support in it, so it's kind of fast and light. Really a kind of casual walking boot, and not a boot for the hills. And then this one here, I'll just mention that very briefly. I do a little bit of hill running. I never actually video any of my running, and it's the first time I've ever mentioned it on the channel, actually, that I do a bit of running. I've been a runner since my teenage years, or even before, to be honest, and I've done a bit of distance running, I've done a little bit of ultra running, and I still do a wee bit of running from time to time. I have an ankle injury that it doesn't trouble me too much, but I need to be a wee bit careful with it. And so if I'm going to be running on tussocky terrain, I put these on, and it's just got a little bit of extra support. It just comes up a little bit. So it's a boot that I use. You might have seen these actually on one or two of the videos, because I sometimes use them for cycling as well. This is a Columbia boot. It is a waterproof boot. It's not a leather boot. It's one of these, I don't know, modern textiles. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's not Gore-Tex. Columbia use their own patented material. I think they call it Outdry or something. So that's what that is. It's a very lightweight boot, good for cycling, and it's okay when I do a little bit of hill running, providing the terrain is not too rough. Then there's my old wellies, which I absolutely love. People also have noticed, and one or two people have commented, that I go hiking in the hills with wellies on, which seems really strange. But these are quite close-fitting wellies, and it's made by a company called Grubs. These are the Snowline 8.5, so I think they're rated down to about minus 26 degrees or something like that. They're super well insulated. They've also got a Vibram sole on them, and then for extra insulation I use this Sorbothane double strike sort of high impact insole. So I've taken the original insoles out and I put this insole in, so there's a massive amount of insulation in there, and the boots don't move about very much on my feet. I use them with a boot sock. So that's the boot socks there, that would go with that. So that's a Bridgedale full length sock, and there isn't anything worse than walking about in wellies with your socks round about your toes because of slip down because of the action of the wellie on the back of your leg. So you need a long sock that comes up a little bit higher than the Wellington boot and grips the calf of your leg quite tightly. So we're romping through. We've ruled out a whole load of boots, and then we're going to get down to the boots which are my go-to boots for most of my adventures throughout Scotland. Let me have a wee sip of tea first. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting down to the bread and butter, getting down to the important boots. So I've got three boots to show you. I've got this Mindle boot, which is a trad boot. This is a traditional leather boot. It's got quite a thin sole on it. Quite a rigid boot. It's got the obvious stitching on it. It's quite high up on the ankle, so it's a fairly stiff boot. And I use this for, just having a pause there because a big gust of wind come over. I use this for a lot of my kind of low to mid-level walks, although this would be a perfectly good three-season boot in Scotland. It's just because I particularly like it, and it was a special order that was made, and I don't know that they'll ever make them again. So I kind of take care of these boots. I want them to last. I love the retro look of them, and I love the feel of them. So so I've had these for a few years, but you can see they're still looking in pretty good shape. So we'll put that over here, and then we get down to my go-to boots really for, I don't know, maybe 90% of my trips now are done wearing these. And these are also Mindle boots. There's two versions and I always get it confused. There's Mindle Burmas, which were the older ones, which I used for years and years and years, and then they changed them, and they made this kind of I think they sold it as a sort of slightly improved or updated version. There's not a lot of difference in it. This one's called the Bhutan. If I'm being absolutely honest with you, I prefer the older one. But I've got into these, and as I say, there's very little difference between the Burma and the Bhutan. So these are Mindle Bhutans, and this is the boot that I would wear almost a four-season boot. I think it's probably a really robust, tough three-season boot for Scotland, but I use this not throughout the winter, but I use it a lot in the winter. If the conditions are getting a bit tougher in the winter, then what I probably would do is I would go to this boot, and this boot is, you can't see very much of it because I've got my gaiters welded on with super strong glue there, so and I don't want to take them off, so I've got these Yeti gaiters on, so you just have to take my word for it that this is a Scarpa boot. It's a Scarpa Manta, and I don't know, for years and years and years the Manta was the go-to for winter hill walking in Scotland. There's a lot of options available to the winter hill walker now, but this will take a crampon, and this, well, what can I say here, folks? This is rated as a B0 boot, so it's actually not supposed to take a crampon, but it will take a C1 crampon. It will take a walking crampon. Quite the thing if you put it, you know, cinch up the straps reasonably tightly, and I've used it for many years over the winter, and I've never flipped a crampon off from this particular boot. However, you know, what I'm saying here comes with a caveat. You know, perhaps it's a case of do as I say, not as I do, and so if you're really looking for a crampon compatible boot, you shouldn't buy this. You should buy something like the Manta, and certainly if you were going on to you know, pretty serious slopes and long stretches, then you know, really you should be looking at something like that. But what we're talking about is walking boots. We're not talking about climbing boots. So I wear my Scarpa Mantas in the winter, and if I think that I'm going to be on steeper or tougher terrain, or if I'm going to be in the crampons for longer periods, then I would put my Mantas on. Now these are the old style Mantas. The new one looks even chunkier, and I think it's maybe even a little bit more rigid. Mine, as you can see, they're pretty old. The soles are quite worn. This is the second, or is it the third sole that's been on these? I can't remember. They've been resoled at least once, maybe twice. But I protect the uppers by having these Gore-Tex Berghaus Yeti gaiters on. Before I put these on, I soaked and soaked and soaked the boots with wax until they were well impregnated with wax. And then I keep the Yeti gaiter in good condition by cleaning it off, drying it off, and then putting reseal on it. The cans of, I can't remember which one I use now, but one of the reproofing agents. And every so often I'll break off the Yeti gaiters, and I will put another layer of wax on. You can't really do it with a gaiter on. And these gaiters, they're not easy to put on and take off. These ones particularly are not easy to get off because they're absolutely solid on here. Most people would tend to put them on with boot glue or with some super strong adhesive. I've tried loads of things, and again, this is a case of you know, don't follow my lead, but actually what I found that worked really well with this is no nails. In theory that shouldn't work because it dries rigid. It's not got any flex or anything in it, but these gaiters have been on there probably for maybe 5 years, and they've never. The annoying thing that happens is they flip up at the front, and it ends up, that bit comes over and the toe gets exposed, and then it gets all packed full of snow, and it's horrible. So I've never had any problem with these. So where are we at? We're at recommending something of this size and weight, which you'll get away with 3 seasons in Scotland, and you'll also get away with for a degree of winter walking in Scotland, as long as you pick your routes carefully. And if you do need some extra traction, you can put on micro spikes, which will work really well on this, or you can put on a C1 crampon. I'm not going to go into climbing because I really don't feel comfortable putting out instructional videos, so I'm just kind of blethering away about my boot collection and what I would wear. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is blisters. Some people think that blisters are an inevitable part of hiking, especially when you're going long distances, if the weather's hot, or if your feet get wet, or if you're carrying a lot of weight. I don't believe that. I think when you're getting blisters, it's more than bad luck. I think you're probably doing something wrong. That's the case for most people. So how do you avoid blisters? Well, I think there's two ways to avoid blisters. One is to have the right boots for the job and to have the right boots for you. So to make sure that the boots that you're wearing are correct for the terrain that you're crossing, and also that they fit you and they fit you properly. And the only way that you can get the boot properly fitted really is to go to one of the better shops where they'll take the time to measure your feet and to work with you on finding a boot that feels right in the shop, and then they allow you to take it home, and then you wear it at home inside for a period until gradually you feel, yes, that is okay. But once you've done that, there's still the chance that you might get blisters. And how does that happen? If you're wondering about the noise, it's there's a shower of rain coming over. Well, the most common reason for people getting blisters is, you know, beyond having ill-fitting boots, that is perhaps they've not tied the boots properly. And I'm not going to show you how to tie your shoes today, but I'm sure that is on YouTube someone has covered this, and actually it might be worth doing at some point. But there is lots of techniques that you can use to tie the boot so that you can get the boot tight in some areas and a little bit of give in other areas. So for example, you might want to have the boot tight across here and a little bit looser there and then tight there. It's really simple to do that if you just put a lock knot in there and then another one in there, so you can have 3 different tensions on the one lace. I'm not going to cover that today, but it is a cause of blisters, especially heel blisters, where people's foot, their heel is lifting up, the boot's maybe just a wee touch big, or the boot is the right size but it's not cinched down properly and your heel is lifting a little bit and you get that horrible heel blister. But another really common reason of getting blisters is because people match super expensive boots with really cheap socks or worn out socks. And the worst combination is a brand new boot which is still a bit stiff and rigid and not completely kind of shaped into your foot, if you match that with a pair of old worn out socks. So you need the right socks and you need the right weight of sock for the conditions and for the duration of your hike. So you're looking at 2 things with the socks. You're looking at, well, maybe 3 things. One, that they fit you. The second thing is that they've got the right level of cushioning, and the third thing is that they've got the right thermal rating, so that they're not going to be too hot, they're not going to be too cold. There's endless choices. I mentioned these Bridgedale socks and also Bridgedale and sealskin socks. I'm a big fan of Bridgedale, so that's Bridgedale welly socks or long socks, that's Bridgedale medium weight hiking socks, and that's Bridgedale waterproof socks there. This video is not sponsored by anybody, by the way, this is personal preference. And I do use my sealskin socks as well. I also use smart wool. So basically, you know, invariably when I'm out and about, I'll have smart wool socks on, or I'll have Bridgedale socks on. And even today, I'm wearing Bridgedale socks just for, I went out for about 8 or 10k walk this morning, which is about a kind of normal distance for my, I tend to do about between 10 and 15 kilometers walking a day, every day. And that's another way to reduce the effect or the likelihood or the incidence of blisters, by using your feet and using your legs. If you're sitting down a lot, then you're not toughening up your feet. Getting out and walking regularly, I think is quite obvious, isn't it? I don't think that your feet necessarily get like super tough from loads and loads of walking, but they do toughen up a little bit for sure. Okay, so socks. So what else can you do to reduce the likelihood of blisters? Well, let me show you this. There's a good tool for reducing blisters. A walking pole. Just taking a little bit of weight off your feet can make such a big difference. And if you're going to especially be carrying weight, having a couple of walking poles where you can plant them, and you can, especially on the uphill and the steep descents, where you can use the poles and take some of the strain away from your legs, especially from your ankles and your feet, and transfer that, and your knees of course, and transfer that up through your arms and shoulders. That will also help. I don't know, some people are kind of surprised at that and some people doubt it, but believe me, it works. Well, I believe it works. Is there anything else you can do? Well, I also think that as well as your boots fitting properly, it's really important that your rucksack fits properly, and you need the right size of rucksack. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that there? There's a 3 on there. So this is a size 3 rucksack. A lot of you will know that rucksacks come in sizes 1, 2 and 3, and a lot of you will know that you can get rucksacks that they're not sized, but they're kind of one size fits all and you can adjust them. And then there's the one size that fits nobody, that can't be adjusted. And personally, I would never buy a rucksack like that. If I can't get the rucksack size to fit, I just wouldn't entertain it. So getting the rucksack for the right size. So I have quite a long back, and I need the size 3. I need the bigger size of the rucksack so that it's sitting well. And you know, if your rucksack is wobbling about when you're walking, it's going to transfer some of that down to your feet, and you might find that you're stumbling a little bit, you're not walking, your gait is affected, you're not walking smoothly, and that can result in, you know, sore feet or in blisters. I also think it's important that when you set your rucksack up, that you get the weight distribution right, and also you use the waist strap so that you put some of the weight on your hips. When I'm carrying heavy weight, I picked this. This is an old Macpac and a New Zealand rucksack, New Zealand company, and I like this Macpac for carrying heavy weight. It's quite a big rucksack, but it's not a super big. I've got bigger volume rucksacks, but when I'm carrying heavy weight, I quite often try and get everything into this rucksack because it's super comfortable for carrying. And one of the reasons that it is because it has this articulating waistband in it. So when you're walking, the rucksack is moving with you, and it's not fighting you. So you're not constantly trying to correct your balance because the rucksack is throwing you off balance. What is happening is the rucksack is moving with you, and having the right amount of weight on your hips and having enough pressure there to keep it there so that it takes a little bit off your back, and having the weight in the rucksack quite high up across and just behind your shoulders allows, and with the walking poles, you can move quite fluidly across the terrain, and all of that takes a little bit of pressure off your feet, which in turn will reduce the likelihood of blisters. However, if the unthinkable happens and you do get blisters, then what do you do about it? Well, some people say that wearing a second pair of socks, 2 pairs of socks and 1 pair of boots. I'm not a keen advocate of double socks, even if I do blister. I just feel that it doesn't work for me, but you know, other people will swear by it. For me, if I think I'm getting a blister, if I feel a hot spot, the first thing that I do, the absolute first thing that I do, is I stop. I don't wait until I think, yeah, that's definitely a blister, because once you know it's a blister, it's too late. So if you feel a hot spot, however inconvenient it is, you've maybe only just left the car and you're only 200 meters down the track and you think something doesn't feel right, stop and fix it. Because once you've got a blister, then you have to treat it, and this treatment here that I'm going to talk about is good, but it's not as good as not having a blister in the first place, if you get my meaning. So stop, adjust your socks, adjust your boot, retie it if necessary, and then maybe think about whether or not you need to adjust your rucksack and the weight that's in it, and then head off again. If you do get a blister, then I'm a believer in using this kind of artificial skin, using Compeed. The thing about this is, once you put it on, you have to keep it on. So if you've got a hot spot, you put that on and just leave it on until the end of the trip. If it does come off, then dry off the area, use an antiseptic wipe on it, and then put, which is going to sting a bit, and then put another piece of Compeed on. Sometimes, you know, once or twice I've been caught out, and you know, mostly because I haven't bothered to carry a spare pair of socks, so my socks have got wet through sweat, and that has caused some rubbing, and I've ended up with a blister. What I tend to do in that situation, a little bit of belt and braces, I put the Compeed on and then I tape my heels. I just use surgical tape, and I tape over, so I make sure that the Compeed is jammed in place, and then there's tape around, and then I put my sock back on, and that just keeps everything tight and in place. A little bit, feels a little bit kind of strange because the surgical tape is quite tight until you get moving again, but gradually you forget about it, and it certainly is a lot better than trying to walk with a raw wound on your heel or on the bottom of your foot or on your toes or wherever you might encounter the blister. So Compeed. Does that about cover it? What else was I going to talk about? Crampons. So that's a wee blather about boots and socks and what have you. And like I say, I'm going to mention a little bit about crampons, but before I do that, I just want to talk about gaiters as well, because gaiters are really useful for extending the life of your boots, and they can also help prevent blisters in their own way, because they stop any vegetation or bits of grit or gravel or whatever getting inside the boot, and they can keep your feet dry, especially if you're crossing boggy terrain or you're splashing through puddles or whatever. So I've got some gaiters to show you. You saw the Yeti gaiters on my Scarpa Mantas there, so that's another set of Yeti gaiters, just in a different colour, and you get them in a super size, in a big size that allows them to fit over my plastic boots. So these are a kind of canvasy ones. The ones that go over the plastic boots are actually they're bright red nylon, the ones that I have. And you can get a simple gaiter. I quite often I don't know how this has managed to get hooked in there. There's two sets of gaiters here. I quite often use this simple gaiter, especially if I'm using lightweight boots. So I mentioned before that sometimes I do a bit of jogging over the hills with these boots, and I wouldn't put a heavy gaiter on that. I'd put this kind of lightweight canvas gaiter on, and this can be reasonably waterproof. Just give it a spray with the water repellent, or if you want, you can wear these ankle gaiters. And normally I wear a Berghaus gaiter over the top of my Mindel, my Boutans. Okay, winter traction. I hesitate here because I don't want to do instructional videos on areas that might lead people into difficulties. So really what you need to do if you're thinking about buying boots for a winter setup, especially for the mountains in Scotland, then you really need to get some professional advice, and the outdoor shops are the first place that I would go to get that advice. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I do. If I'm going out and I don't think I'm going to be on particularly steep or difficult ground, I'm not going to be wearing my crampon very long for an extended period during the trip or the hike, then I would probably use a C1 crampon. It's a kind of basic walking crampon. It's not good for sustained steep slopes or for exposed ground. It's okay for icy ground at you know, I was going to say lower elevation, but I don't really mean that. What I mean is less challenging terrain, not necessarily just flat terrain, but maybe kind of undulating type terrain. If I was going to be on ridges, more exposed ground, longer slopes with big drop-offs, then I would be looking at a C2 crampon, which is a more aggressive crampon, and I would probably be fitting that to my mantas, and the mantas will take that. So a C1 crampon will fit on, it'll fit on a B1 boot, or right up to a B3 boot. So it's a basic crampon. It'll fit on any of these boots. It'd be kind of strange in some ways to have a basic crampon on a big mountaineering boot, but what I'm saying is it actually will fit on your big mountaineering boots. If you're on a B3 boot, ordinarily you would expect to see somebody with a C3 crampon on, so highly technical boot with a highly technical crampon on it. But I think we can forget all of that, and all we need to think about really is some added traction. If we're just doing some fairly tame winter hill walking, we would get away with putting some micro spikes on, or putting on a C1 non-aggressive crampon, and that'll get you over quite a lot of tame terrain. If you're going to go on to more serious terrain, then I strongly encourage you to think about a C2 crampon and make sure that you've got a boot that's compatible with that, probably a B2 boot. And I think I'll just leave it there. I think that's probably as far as I ought to go, without getting into misleading anybody, or saying, well, I do this and I do that. You know, what I do doesn't really matter. It's what you do and how safe you are that really matters. Well, I've blethered on far longer than I planned. Truth be told, getting the boots out was just an excuse to break out the camera and have a wee blether with you to let you know what's happening here. We're all good. There's not very much happening. Out and about every day, hiking locally, but lockdown prevents me from getting further afield for the time being, so no adventures to film, but that will change, I promise you. I'm not done with the channel by any means. I'm just biding my time. We'll get out and about soon, and we'll get some adventures underway that we'll share together. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Hope I didn't bore you too much with my book collection. I'm just about to put them all away back in the gear room now. So I wish you well. I'll stay in touch. So tune in for more adventures from Dave Outdoors Scotland, and leave me a comment. Let me know how you're doing. Missing you all. Take care, folks. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.